This is part 14 of building an off-grid school bus. In this video, I'm making the countertop. I decided I wanted to have a live edge wood countertop. So I started by buying 2 cedar boards off of Facebook Marketplace. And then I sanded the bark off of the live edge. And in order for my countertop to be big enough, I have to fasten 2 boards together. To do this, I clamp a straight metal bar onto the wood to help me cut it as straight as possible. I do this on both boards. However, my seam is still not perfect, so I use a wood planer to shave it down just right. Next, I have to make a notch out where my driver chair is going to be, and then I sand both boards down nice and smooth. And before I fasten the 2 boards together, I decide to cut out where the sink is going. Next, I'm using this biscuit joiner to fasten my 2 boards together. This cuts little slots out into the boards, and then you put little wooden biscuits into the slots with wood glue. This is how they're held together perfectly. And I screwed some boards to the underside to help it stay straight while it was drying. And here's a closer shot of how I connected the boards together. Next, I used the live edge that I had previously cut off the countertop to create a backsplash. I carefully notched it around each window, and I dry fit the countertop to make sure it fit just right. After that, I cut a hole out for an outlet. And then I use a router which rounds off all the sharp edges of the countertop. And I drilled the holes for my sink faucet and my drinking faucet. And I decided to finish the countertop with an epoxy resin, which I had never done before, so this was a bit of an experiment. I bought this pour over kit, so all I had to do was mix the 2 parts together and then spread it across the surface. However, it was not perfect. The epoxy sank into the knots, so I decided to do a second coat. To do this, you have to sand it down for a proper adhesion. After I finished sanding the whole thing down to a 220 grit, I used isopropyl alcohol to clean off all the sawdust before applying the second coat of epoxy. Once the countertop was in place, I then decided to attach the sink faucet, and I had to notch out the countertop because the threads didn't make it through. Once I had successfully installed the sink faucet, I then used a lot of glue to make sure my sink would stay in place. And fortunately there was help because these sinks are obnoxiously heavy. And then I had help to install my drinking water faucet, which is attached to water filters. And now I can install the drain at the bottom of the sink. Here I'm using plumber putty for a good seal. And now I'm drilling a hole straight through the floor of the bus for my plumbing, which I will eventually run into a gray water tank under the bus. Next, I wire in my countertop outlet. And lastly, I can finally glue on all the cedar caps and backsplash that I made to go around the windows.